so anytime in a movie that you're going to reference towns from Minnesota, we got to watch.
Oh, I know,
because we're
right?
from Minnesota, right? Yeah, we got to watch it, right? Yeah.
Especially when you do Minnesotan things like you have romances, you have people spending a lot of time outdoors, you have eating people, you have
and insane asylums.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about kind of a under the radar hit of 2022.
Yeah.
It's a romance horror. I call it romance horror, not a horror romance, and I'll get explained a little bit later. Today we're talking about Bones and All.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals of content and tell us what movies we should review in the future. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about it's a horror movie. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's Bones and All.
So Marin, a young woman wanting to fit in, has a significant problem. She can't stop consuming human flesh. She's been forced to flee alongside her father numerous times, but when Marin ends up traveling alone, she meets Lee, another young drifter with the same affliction. As they crisscross the Midwest, they find themselves sharing feelings and a few bodies.
So this is based on the book by Camille de Angles. It was considered Lexus Award. Lexus Awards are pretty much movies to spotlight that are wonderful for young kids to read. Not necessarily young kids, teens, like teenagers from like 14 to 18 books. That kind of trying to spotlight. So she won the Lexus Award in 2016. Its director is Luca Guadagnino, who also did the remake of Suspiria. And kind of that very eerie movie, Call Me Your Name, with Timothée Chalamet. That's why he's in this movie too. But also stars Taylor Russell.
Yeah.
I've really never seen her before in anything. I know she was in Escape
Taylor
Room.
Russell. Yeah, she's great in both Escape Room movies.
Okay, I haven't seen the second one.
And she is also absolutely terrific in this movie called Waves that came out a couple years back. I don't love the movie Waves, but I love a lot of things about the movie Waves. And she plays the younger sister of a guy that goes to jail for a horrible crime in high school, and she's like learning to figure out her life now as this like person who's connected to what his crimes are.
Waves, yeah.
Yeah, she's phenomenal in Waves.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird that all of a sudden Timothy's in this movie. He's just like it's like a virus. All of a sudden you just heard his name and now he's in everything. Yeah,
I'll take it, man.
Yeah.
I love me some Chalamet in the morning. So,
but it has a great supporting cast. Chloe Sevigny, is she the mom?
Yep,
that's her.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when I saw the picture of her, because they show the picture of the mom like when she was younger, and I was like, oh, okay, so she's gonna be the mom.
Yeah, and Jessica Harper, she's in this movie as well.
Worked with Guadagnino on Suspiria's remake as well, so she appeared in
Jessica
that film.
Yes, yeah. And then Mark Rylance, who just did a movie. I kind of liked it, Outfit. I know it's not going to get a lot of accolades. It's kind of the story is kind of almost like a play.
It came and went pretty quick at the beginning of the year. I even missed it in theaters myself. So.
If you're interested and do have Amazon Prime, check out the Outfit. If you have the subscription, it's free to watch, and it's kind of interesting. But he's like the center focus. He's like the lead of this. Here, he's the supporting role.
What's great about Mark Rylance, if you look at his recent work, my God, he has played every different type of character you can. When you compare him in this film,
super nerd and player.
Yeah, like Ready Player One, where he's a super nerd, but then like the idiot tech mogul in Don't Look Up. There's the the spy in Bridge of Spies. There's the BFG plays the freaking giant. Like, yeah.
And then he plays this sad, pathetic Sully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like, he is so excellent in everything he does. Even that little scenes that he's in Dunkirk. It's like Mark Rylance has quickly become one of my favorite actors to see on screen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He did this great movie this year. Oh my God, I have to praise it because we're not going to get to cover it this year. Phantom of the Open, where he plays the one of the like worst golfers ever who finds a way to get into the British Open. It is phenomenal. It's a true story. Check out Phantom of the Open if you get a chance.
My golf-obsessed father-in-law probably get a kick out of it. Right. So it's based on the book. Screenplay by David Kavanagh. I don't really know anything else about David adapting this book. I haven't read the book.
Yeah,
either.
I haven't read the book. I trust David as a writer because I actually, one of the people I really enjoyed his screenplay for The Invasion, which came out in '06. That was his Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake.
Right.
He also was one of the...
With Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was one of the creators, I believe, of AMC's show The Terror, which is a horror history anthology show that was produced by Ridley Scott. Both seasons of that show are phenomenal, especially the first one. And then he also, again, crafted that Suspiria remake, which as much as Suspiria enters into my top 10 horror films of all time, that remake is also fantastic.
It's a complete opposite.
Yeah, because it's not doing the same thing, you know?
Where it's almost like the original is very whimsical, very fairy tale. They mute the colors and bring out the horrific.
And David's script does that, where it kind of just it veers into familiar territory and then switches out.
So with this book, you're talking about Taylor Russ's character, it's almost a genetic disposition. It's not really an addiction, but it's almost like genetically disposed that she has this thing where she wants to consume human flesh raw.
Yeah,
right. You gotta understand it's raw. It's not like they're gonna cook a meal together.
It's almost like almost like a mutation, from what it sounded like. Kind of like how she's an X-Men in some ways, except her special power is I have to eat people. So.
Right, because it's almost have this mysticism about it that they can smell each other.
Yeah,
which is very interesting when you watch the movie. All of a sudden, it's like there's a lot more of these people around. Why do they keep bumping into each other? It's almost like they recognize through smell and how they act that you're one of them too.
Yeah, it's almost like carnival style, where like
they're
kind of whimsical characters that kind of
Cannibal Radar is up, right? Yeah, Cannibal Radar. Oh, you're one too.
Cannibal Radar, new band name, calling it
Cannibal Radar. Right. So it plays. When I watched it, I'm gonna get to my review, but it's very much like Near Dark, where you have a romance and then the horror. This is a very romance. But the horror is still there.
Yeah.
But I count it romance first, then horror. I don't know if it's important to put the categories first for you. But I want to emphasize
that requires the romance to work, even if the horror doesn't. And I'm not saying one way or the other. We'll talk about it. But the romance has to work in this movie. And if it doesn't, the film doesn't work. Whereas I think if you had a person who didn't even like horror films watching this film, they would have to connect to that first. Right. And it's just a question of can they handle some of the other sequences.
So I think if you want to pitch this to people, it is a romance, but it's understanding what I'm saying to horror fans.
Yeah.
You're not going to get much of the horror as much as the romance. But I think people that love horror movies or like to consume horror movies, understand them, will understand that this is not so much a shock to people like, I want to watch teenage romance. What the hell is going on? Right, yeah.
There's some really intense lingering shots. And I think that the linger is important for the horror of the film because there's moments where you're wondering how did they accomplish that? Because it's a smaller budget film. How did they accomplish that realism in the horror elements without cutting away at the camera? And I think that's where a lot of people may struggle, is that there are some like really intense moments where the camera is focused. I'm talking that first scene with the finger deglove kind of thing.
Yeah, then you
really
I can tell they use two different cameras. The beginning is a very cheap camera. I don't know if they said filmed at different times, but eventually, I think probably through the midpoint of they actually had very much a different upgrade camera to use. But you realize it's supposed to be kind of grainy homemade because this book is supposed to take place in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about it until they started pulling out the road maps.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize the
road maps, the lack of cell phones. There's was this the one where it had these scenes where they're watching Rudy Giuliani in the 80s is on the television, I believe.
Yeah.
And so like there's that little subtle hints that's where we're at, the music choices, that kind of thing.
Until we see Lee's sister in her outfits, and it's like, oh my God, this is the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the
it doesn't tell you, right?
Yeah, the sequences of horror in the film, I think it's interesting because I'm not someone who's seen the new Terrifier sequel that everyone went crazy about. But there were so many people that said, I've seen Terrifier too. It's a lot of really graphic violence, but the violence that has really stuck with me is the bones and all stuff. Because it's so integral to the film, and it has that weird kind of energy to it where it's believable.
Yeah. Especially when they're cannibals and they're homicidal, they're going to kill people to get their feeding. You understand Taylor Russell has her character, Marin, has as what she's looking for her authentic self. Is she going to go like the other people she continues to see on her journey? Is she going to go aggressive like Lee? Mark Rylance character, are you going to just be a predator out in the open and not be so threatening, or are you going to be the backwoods people in Kentucky where like it's almost like Tree Lounge with Steve Buscemi. I'm a drunk, but you guys are severely alcoholics.
Problems.
Right.
Yeah.
With Maureen, she's like, I'm a cannibal, but you guys are really messed up.
Well,
but it's almost like, well, you're part of the same, yeah.
What's so fascinating is that every character has a philosophy in this film. Every cannibal has a different way that they go about these things, and it's their way of, I think, making sense of it for themselves, making it make sense where they're not monsters.
Right, because this is one of the
that.
ultimate taboos. We talk about the taboo in Sweet Hereafter, which is incest. The next one is cannibalism.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a taboo where people can't really be out in the open about it, so you have to circumnavigate through subcultures to find it. So, yeah.
It's something where, like, having those interactions, that was what I always found was most interesting to me, was when we meet Mark Rylance a lot earlier in the film than I expected to.
Well, he finds her.
Yeah. And he's explaining to her, like, how his rules work, and it's funny that he tells her, we people should probably not be too close together. Because we're going to have to eat, and the more often we do...
Probably eat each other.
But then he's like, but we should also hang out. Like...
he's kind lonely.
Of, yeah,
right.
So he's kind of that character who's diametrically opposed to what he's going for. When we meet Michael Stuhlbarg's Jake, who now I can see why he looked that way in Doctor Strange too, with his hair all ratty, because he was probably filming this movie at the same time. Michael Stuhlbarg, and also weirdly enough, Halloween Ends director David Gordon Green in the film.
Yeah, he's got a Dawkins shirt on.
Yeah, with the Dawkins shirt. That's how you know it's 80s.
Yeah.
Playing those guys, they each have different versions of how they view this thing that they have to do, and it's interesting to have each character have their own philosophy as Marin builds hers. She's world building her own purpose.
Right, she's searching for her authentic self. And I always say with writing, I always want to see if your character is searching for the authentic self as well as you're not writing safe. This is obviously not writing safe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, up next is overall our review of Bones and All. So I was willing to just not really set to hate this movie. I was like, what's the big deal? I was like, I was ready to just like, I don't get it. Let's watch it. After watching it, I really regard this movie. It's high up for me. It's probably can probably stay in my top 10.
What was bothering? Are you a Timothy Chalamet?
I thought it was going to be a cheap knockoff to like Near Dark.
Oh,
that was my perception, that we have a romance and horror. We're going to get that. We're going to borrow a lot from Near Dark. It's absolutely none of that. It has the same temperament to it, but it's actually a complete different script to this. I really like this movie. It does not writing safe, searching for your authentic self, and then you have a tangible relationship. You actually feel for Maureen and Lee.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, and if the again, I said it before, if the romance doesn't work, the film doesn't work. This is a movie where if the horror didn't work, it doesn't really matter if the romance works.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was absolutely enthralled with the fact that you could pull the cannibalism out of this movie, and it works as a young adult romance.
Yep.
On multiple levels, and probably one of the best. I actually said after I watched this yesterday, I said, this might be in my top 10 favorite romance movies of all time. This might have entered that list, because I don't even know if I can really compile 10 confident choices, but it's absolutely in that conversation.
It shot up as soon as when I realized it is its own original movie. It's a very fresh movie. I don't know if people will regard this as a Academy. This is hard for an Academy Award to recognize, because the content's kind of like.
Well, and we all thought Suspiria would get up for best makeup when we have
right.
One of our actresses modeling as a man the entire time.
Yeah.
I worry about it in that way, but to be honest, Luca Guadagnino as a director is one of those guys. Call Me by Your Name has grown on me exponentially. I've seen it now 3 or 4 times. Right. I liked the movie quite a bit when I first saw it, but I love that movie now.
Same with me with Suspiria.
Yeah.
I was ready to hate that movie. I don't want you to do a remake. And it's kind of like, I understand it's not a remake, but its own interpretation is complete.
It's almost like based on the same book that's not a book.
Yes. Yeah. And I think Luca's kind of the person there. It's like, you kind of like, this is what I have to watch. And then you get invested into it. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. The only thing that had me worried about the film actually was I read one review, just one review that was negative, because I wanted to see what the person didn't like about the film first, because I was psyching myself up a lot. And he said the movie tries to be Near Dark and it can't even reach Twilight. And I said, oh.
Well, what are you referencing those two movies?
In terms of
nothing to do with it.
In terms of the monster elements with the romance elements.
Right.
And I was whoa.
Now I feel like jerk bringing up Near Dark.
No, it's
because if
true.
there's like a Western movie, it feels like it's all about grief, loneliness, and despair. I think people are searching for the authentic self, knowing that they have a disposition that they probably don't really want. And
Yeah.
then she's trying to figure out her barrier parameter because her mom. Now you realize what her mom is, and it's like, I don't want to be like you.
Yeah.
You're actually nuts. But I do like the soft points of the movie. I like all the camera choices. There's a little hiccup in the movie where spoilers you haven't seen, where they kill Mark Rylance and they drag him. I would like them to hold that shot, but they do a one cut angle and go back. That if you just keep that shot going, you won me over. But it's that one. It's for the whole entire movie. That's the one little.
I
snippet.
wonder how much like work they had to go through as far as attaining a sizable enough budget to make the movie, because it's not an expensive movie to make. And when you shoot a lot of it in Ohio, it's not that like taxing on that.
No, it's on location. A lot of it's on location too.
But I do imagine that like convincing MGM to give me some money to make this cannibal romance film. Now, to be fair, on MGM's own like record, they said this is their first cannibal film since Hannibal in 2001, which is a weird distinction to have to make. But I bet this movie was more difficult to attain a sizable enough budget for things that there was going to have to be cuts like that. There was going to have to be sacrifices in vision.
Well, I just mean you're dragging them to the bathroom. Keep going. But then they cut to the feet, and they go back to dragging. And I was like, that was unnecessary cut. Just keep going. I love if you did that. That's a little nitpick for an entire movie that I loved.
Yeah, someone sneezed during that shot. They
probably.
had to cut away from it.
Right.
Yeah, what I think surprised me the most was how much the overall cast of the film won me over, because I went into this film for Taylor Russell, who I adore now. I've seen her in so many films where she's surprised the hell out of me, and Timothée Chalamet, who can do no wrong. I went into this film for them, but yeah, having Mark Rylance, having David Gordon Green, Jessica Harper hop up. We haven't mentioned Andre Holland, who I loved in Moonlight. He plays Marin's father, who doesn't get a lot of time in the film, but his presence is there because of that tape that he
They have
records.
that one cut scene of him vomiting blood where it's like,
Yeah.
forgot we're still a horror movie. Okay.
Yeah, if you guys like Andre Holland and like horror, he did the first season of the Stephen King adaptation Castle Rock for Hulu. It's great. And he's great in it. Andre Holland is one of those actors that, he has about as much screen time in this movie as he probably does in Moonlight.
Yeah.
But his presence is there because of that tape, and I love how the mythology is not thrown at you in the first 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
But because of the tape, we get slowly fed mythology and
He had
background
to say
throughout the thing. Oh, it's live.
He had to
I
say
wasn't doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
But then having each character with their own personal code of ethics adds to that mythology. Being able to watch how it goes, the reference to Bones and all, like that point at the finger. They said the title of the movie part where Michael Stuhlbarg says, that's when you've graduated.
That's when you've done everything. I would like to see nominations for Mark. I would like to see Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah, I definitely. That's I think the most likely one, because adapted screenplay doesn't have as many hits this year as I think it could. So.
And I'd like to see Best Director nominations. I'd like to see those nominations. You could probably do, I think Trent Reznor, we didn't talk about that. He did the music for this, the musical score. Probably get a nomination for that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give the film a rewatch on the score, because it didn't stand out to me. And then when I saw that they'd worked on it, I was surprised it didn't stand out to me. But
it's not that overall Nine Inch Nails music. It's Trent Reznor doing the score for this, which I'm sure he would be if you pitched that to Trent Reznor, hey, you want to do music for a Cannibal Romance? He will say, hell yeah.
But at the same time, Trent Reznor has not picked movies that have been particularly like what we expect him to do.
No.
I mean, his first role being in Social Network. He recently did Soul, the score for that. And it's like, he's not picking movies we expect him to pick either. So, but yeah, I'd have to give that one a rewatch.
So I'd like to see Best Original Score. I would like to see nominations for Supporting Actor, nominations for Best Director, and Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah, I think they're going to get passed over for any lead work just because it's been a particularly stacked year, especially for female performances. This year is incredibly stacked for female
Seen
performances.
Fableman's, Michelle Williams, and that.
You could nominate the whole cast of women talking.
That too.
So like this year has been packed for that. So I think best likely is maybe a best supporting for Rylance. I still don't think it's going to happen. And I think his best chance, though, is adapted screenplay. I think without a doubt that one's got an in. But it's going to be tough for this movie to break in because even though all the new ads to the Academy, it's still a cannibal romance film. And it's still sold as a cannibal romance film. And I think that's going to be an incredibly difficult bar to cross.
Hard to digest. I had to do it. So,
You hungry now?
have you seen this movie? Oh my God, it's gonna be hard to keep it off my top 10.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
It's a movie that I was really, really into, and I think I'll love it even more on the second watch.
Yeah.
I think all of Guadagnino's films work better.
You do that.
again.
He does that with like Suspiria and Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
The second watch, you're like, yeah.
He's not about the meal, he's about the leftovers. So let us know your thoughts on Bones and All. The film is currently available to rent and purchase digitally, as well as available in some theaters still, so please give it a view. And let us know.
You know Brian Egger, we know this is a top 5
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
Come on, comment below.
Yeah.
Tell us, man.
You know.
All right, and let us know your thoughts on the film down below. And maybe what's your favorite Luca Guadagnino film? Because honestly, I've only seen these 3 that we've talked about today. I haven't seen A Bigger Splash. I haven't seen a lot of his earlier work.
Heard about that one.
So let us know down below in the comments if there's a Guadagnino film that we've completely avoided in this review. We'd love to talk about him some more in next season's episodes. Thank you guys for joining us. Please make sure you like and subscribe and check out that Patreon link down below. We'd love to have you join the team. You can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, The St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And just like this movie, don't write safe.